Welcome back, Chosen One. Let me tell you something that's going to rearrange everything you thought you understood about the attacks you've survived. Those dark forces that came for you, the ones that wrapped themselves around your life like chains trying to drag you under, they made one catastrophic mistake. They assumed you were breakable. They assumed you'd stay down. They assumed that binding you would be the end of your story. But here's the twist that's currently tearing through their reality like lightning through darkness. Every chain they wrapped around you didn't trap you. It transformed you. Every binding became a breakthrough. Every curse they threw became the exact catalyst that upgraded your frequency beyond anything they could have predicted. And now, right now, in this exact moment, they're the ones locked in place while you walk free. Press that like button and subscribe, because what I'm about to reveal will confirm everything you felt but couldn't quite name. The attacks weren't random. The resistance wasn't coincidence. You were targeted specifically because they saw something in you that terrified them. Something ancient, something uncontrollable, something that threatened the entire system they built their power on. They tried to bind your potential before it fully awakened. They tried to chain your evolution before you discovered what you're actually capable of becoming. But the universe doesn't work the way they thought it did. And you're living proof that their dark magic just backfired in the most spectacular way possible. Stay locked in, because we're about to walk through this step by step. And if you're really one of the chosen ones who turned their attacks into armor, you're going to feel every word of this pulling you deeper. You're going to recognize the patterns. You're going to see the evidence scattered throughout your entire life. And by the end, you're going to understand exactly why they can't touch you anymore. Why they're stuck watching from a distance, frozen in the consequences of their own failed assault. The reversal already happened. You just didn't realize how complete it was until right now. They came at you with everything they had, thinking volume would overwhelm you. Remember those seasons when everything fell apart simultaneously, when your relationships imploded, your opportunities vanished, your health declined, your mental clarity shattered? All at once, like someone orchestrated the collapse from behind a curtain. That wasn't bad luck. That was a coordinated binding ritual disguised as life circumstances. They sent confusion to cloud your mind, isolation to weaken your spirit, doubt to poison your confidence, and fear to paralyze your forward movement. They layered these attacks like chains, one after another, hoping the weight would crush you into submission, into smallness, into forgetting who you actually are underneath the human costume you're wearing. But here's what they fundamentally misunderstood about chosen ones like you. Pressure doesn't break you, it reveals you. Every chain they added forced you to reach deeper into yourself than you'd ever gone before. Every binding pushed you past the surface level identity you thought was you and dragged you down into the core, into the unbreakable foundation, into the part of you that existed before this lifetime and will exist long after. They tried to trap you in limitation, but what they actually did was force you to discover the limitless nature hiding beneath your skin. You didn't break under that pressure, you broke through it. You shattered every false ceiling they tried to lock you under. The binding ritual failed the moment you refused to accept their narrative about who you were supposed to be. They needed you to believe you were weak, cursed, unlucky, broken beyond repair. They needed you to internalize the chains so you'd keep yourself bound even after they stepped back. But something in you, some ancient knowing, some cellular memory, some whisper from your higher self kept saying no, kept saying this isn't the truth, kept saying there's something else happening here that you can't see yet. And that refusal, that stubborn unwillingness to accept their version of your reality, that's what snapped every chain they tried to forge. You transformed the attack into fuel. Every curse became a lesson. Every binding became training. Every dark force that came for you accidentally taught you how to operate in dimensions they don't even know exist. They tried to push you down, and instead they pushed you inward, into depths of power and perception they can't access. They tried to trap you in weakness, and instead they forced you to discover strength that doesn't depend on external circumstances. They tried to bind your light, and instead they taught you how to generate light from within, independent of anything outside yourself. The binding became your breakthrough, because you're built differently than they calculated. Here's where it gets beautiful and brutal in equal measure. The moment you broke through their binding, The moment you shattered those chains and stood up in your full frequency, something cosmic shifted. The energy they sent toward you, all that darkness, all that malice, all that calculated intent to harm, it didn't just dissipate into nothing. Energy doesn't work that way. It has to go somewhere. And because you refused to absorb it, because you transformed instead of breaking, because you alchemized their attack into your awakening, all that dark energy reversed direction like a boomerang traveling at the speed of karma. They're bound now. Not by you because you didn't have to lift a finger. They're bound by the consequences of their own actions, trapped in the exact energy they tried to trap you in. The universe has laws they thought they could bypass, thought they could manipulate, thought they could cheat. But those laws are absolute. What you send out returns. The harm you intend for others eventually circles back. The chains you forge for someone else eventually lock around your own wrists. They're experiencing this right now, and they can feel it tightening, and they know exactly why it's happening, and they know there's nothing they can do to stop it. Imagine them sitting in rooms they used to control, feeling the walls close in. Imagine them reaching for power they used to wield easily, only to find their hands pass through it like smoke. Imagine them trying to move forward with their plans, their schemes, their manipulations, and discovering that every path is suddenly blocked, every door is suddenly locked, every opportunity is suddenly gone. That's not coincidence. That's the binding returning to its source. They built a prison meant for you, and now they're serving the sentence they designed. The universe doesn't miss. The reversal is precise, proportional, and permanent. You didn't have to curse them back. You didn't have to attack them. You didn't have to seek revenge or justice or any form of retaliation. All you had to do was survive. All you had to do was refuse to break. All you had to do was keep moving forward despite everything they threw at you. And that survival, that forward movement, that stubborn existence in the face of their assault, that activated the reversal automatically. The universe saw what they tried to do. The universe saw what you became instead. And the universe corrected the imbalance without you having to lift a finger. They're bound because they bound themselves the moment they came for someone operating under protection they didn't know existed. You walk differently now. People notice it even if they can't name what changed. There's a lightness in your movement, not because life got easier, but because you dropped the weight of their expectations, their judgments, their limitations, their projections. Every chain they tried to wrap around you, every binding they attempted, every restriction they imposed, all of it taught you one crucial lesson that they never wanted you to learn. You don't need anyone's permission to be powerful. You don't need anyone's approval to be free. You don't need anyone's validation to be exactly who you came here to be. The freedom you carry now is the kind that can't be taken away because it's not dependent on external circumstances. They tried to bind you to their systems, their hierarchies, their rules, their games. They needed you to believe that your power came from playing their game well, from following their structure, from earning your place in their pyramid. But when they attacked, when they tried to strip everything away, when they attempted to leave you with nothing, they accidentally revealed the truth they never wanted you to see. Your power was never in their system. Your worth was never in their approval. Your strength was never dependent on anything they controlled. They're terrified of your freedom because it exposes the prison they're still living in. They're still bound by the need for control, for validation, for external power. They're still trapped in the game, still playing by rules that don't actually exist, still believing that dominance and manipulation equal strength. But you walked out of that entire paradigm. You're operating from a completely different frequency now, one where their threats don't register, their attacks don't land, their opinions don't matter. That freedom is what terrifies them most because it proves that everything they built their identity on is optional. Freedom isn't the absence of challenges, it's the presence of choice. And you've got choice now in ways you never had before. You choose how you respond. You choose where you place your energy. You choose who gets access to your space. You choose what narratives you accept about yourself. They tried to remove all your choices, tried to force you into one narrow path, tried to make you believe you had no options. But breaking their binding gave you back choice in its purest form, and every choice you make from this empowered place reminds them that they failed. Every step you take in freedom is proof that their chains were illusions you're no longer entertaining. Something activated in you during those attacks that wouldn't have activated any other way. You discovered abilities you didn't know existed, perceptions you didn't know you could access, strength you didn't know you contained. The dark forces that came for you were like a match that thought it would burn down a forest, not realizing it was actually lighting a controlled fire that would clear away dead wood and allow new growth. They intended destruction. They triggered evolution. They wanted to end you. They initiated your becoming. You can see through people now in ways you couldn't before. Their masks don't work on you. Their performances fall flat. Their manipulations are visible before they even finish the setup. The attacks sharpened your discernment into a blade so precise you can cut through lies without speaking a word. They taught you the language of energy, the signs of deception, the patterns of manipulation. Every dark force that came for you accidentally trained you to recognize darkness in all its forms. They thought they were overwhelming you. They were actually educating you in recognition, in protection, in spiritual warfare tactics you'd never have learned in peacetime. Your intuition isn't just strong now, it's surgical. You feel shifts before they happen. You sense intentions before they're acted on. You know who's safe and who's dangerous within seconds of meeting them. This wasn't a skill you were born with in its current intensity. This is a skill that got forged in the fire of their attacks, sharpened on the stone of their deception, perfected through repeated attempts to fool you. They thought confusion was their weapon. Instead, it became your teacher. Every time they tried to hide something, your system learned to see deeper. Every time they tried to deceive you, your radar calibrated higher. The power you're carrying now makes them deeply uncomfortable because they remember when you didn't have it. They remember when you were easier to manipulate, when you trusted too easily, when you gave too many chances, when you didn't see the game being played. But that version of you died in their attack. The person who emerged from those chains is someone they can't recognize, can't predict, can't control. You're not who they thought you were. You're not who they tried to make you. You're who you became specifically because they tried to destroy you. And that version of you is terrifying to anyone still operating in darkness. They left their signature all over the attack, didn't they? Every move they made, every chain they tried to forge, every binding they attempted, it all pointed back to them like neon arrows. They thought they were being clever, thought they were being subtle, thought no one would trace the source. But you marked them just by surviving. You didn't have to say their names. You didn't have to expose them publicly. You didn't have to tell your side of the story. Your continued existence after everything they threw at you is the loudest testimony that could ever be spoken. People who know, they know. People who are watching, they saw. People who have discernment, they felt the entire thing play out on energetic levels. The dark forces that came for you left evidence scattered everywhere, invisible to those operating on surface levels but blindingly obvious to anyone operating with spiritual sight. And now those same forces are marked, not by you cursing them, not by you seeking revenge, but by the universe registering their assault on someone under protection. They painted targets on themselves the moment they came for you, and they can't wash it off. The mark they carry now follows them into every space they enter. It's in their energy field like a stain that won't lift. Other dark forces recognize it and know to avoid them because they're compromised, they're weakened, they're on the losing side of a cosmic battle they don't even fully understand. Light beings recognize it too and keep them at arm's length, knowing that getting involved with them means getting caught in the consequences of their failed binding. They've been isolated by their own actions, quarantined by the reversal, separated from both darkness and light, because neither wants to be associated with the energy of failure they're now carrying. You didn't have to do anything except survive and evolve. That was enough. Your transformation marked them more effectively than any curse could have. Your freedom exposed them more completely than any accusation could have. Your continued forward movement, despite their best efforts to stop you, became the evidence that will follow them through lifetimes. They're bound to the memory of what they tried to do and bound to the reality of watching it backfire. That's a chain far heavier than anything they tried to put on you. Look at where you're headed now. Look at the timeline you're building, the frequency you're operating from, the reality you're creating. They can't access this dimension you're in. They're locked out. Not because you blocked them, though you could have. They're locked out because the frequency gap is too wide. You evolved past the bandwidth they operate on. You're building in spaces they can't perceive, creating in ways they can't comprehend. moving in directions they can't follow. Their binding attempt accidentally elevated you beyond their reach. The future unfolding in front of you right now is one they have no access to. Not because you're hiding it, not because you're protecting it, simply because they can't vibrate at the level required to even see it, let alone enter it. You're operating in dimensions of abundance, peace, purpose, and creation that require a frequency they don't possess. They're still stuck in manipulation, control, scarcity, and fear, frequencies that can't coexist with where you're building. The gap keeps widening with every step you take forward. They're becoming smaller in your rearview mirror, not because you're trying to leave them behind, but because forward is the only direction you know how to move now. They're bound to their current level. They can't evolve past it because evolution requires the willingness to face yourself, to transform, to let the old identity die so something new can emerge. They're not capable of that. They're too attached to who they've been, too invested in the power they've accumulated, too afraid of the vulnerability that real transformation requires. So they stay stuck, bound by their own resistance to growth, while you keep ascending. Every attack they launched at you forced you into another evolution. Every chain they tried to wrap around you pushed you into another upgrade. You're not the same frequency you were when they started, and they're exactly who they've always been. The timelines are splitting. Yours is rising, theirs is descending, and there's nothing they can do to change that trajectory now, because the choices have already been made. You chose evolution when you could have chosen bitterness. You chose growth when you could have chosen revenge. You chose freedom when you could have chosen to stay in the victim consciousness. Those choices locked in your ascending timeline. Their choices to attack, to manipulate, to try binding someone under protection, locked in their descending one. The future they can't enter is the one you're actively creating every day by choosing differently than they're capable of choosing. So here we stand, chosen one, at the end of this revelation that's probably confirming everything you felt in your bones, but couldn't prove with words. The dark forces that came for you are bound now by their own failed attack. The chains they forged became their prison. The curse they sent became their sentence. And you're walking free in dimensions they can't access, building realities they can't enter, operating at frequencies they can't match. The reversal is complete. The binding backfired. The war they started ended with their surrender to consequences they created. You don't need to gloat. You don't need to announce your victory. Your freedom speaks louder than any words could. Your continued evolution is the most brutal reminder of their failure. They tried to stop you, and instead they launched you forward with momentum they accidentally provided. Every chain became rocket fuel. Every binding became a breakthrough. Every attack became an activation. They're bound forever by what they tried to do, and you're free forever because of what you became instead. If this truth hit exactly where it needed to, drop 777 in the comments right now to lock in this frequency. Smash that like button, subscribe to stay connected to this awakening content, and share this with another chosen one who needs to hear that the forces that came for them are already bound by their own darkness. You survived, you evolved, you won, and the universe made sure the score was settled without you having to lift a finger. Welcome to your freedom, chosen one. The chains are gone and they're never coming back.